If you've ever actually sat down and looked at a birth chart, you know it is absolutely full of potential. It's like a blueprint of a life. But to truly unlock that potential, you need the master key. And that key? It's karmic timing. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to use a really beautiful metaphor, the tree and the fruit, to understand exactly how, and more importantly, when, the dormant seeds planted in your birth chart actually blossom into reality. Let's dive right in.
So we have to start with the biggest question in all of astrology. I mean, it's the one everyone wants to know. Okay, but when will it actually happen? A horoscope might promise tremendous wealth, finding a soulmate, or maybe even immense fame. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. The birth chart alone doesn't tell us when. It's literally just a promise. To find out exactly when that promise is going to be kept, we have to look somewhere else entirely. To put this into perspective, many practical astrologers assign about 55% of predictive importance to the natal promise. So that's your D1 chart, your divisional charts, your yogas, all the foundational stuff. But a massive 45% of the weight goes to what we call dashas. These are the planetary timing periods. You could have a super powerful Raja Yoga promising unparalleled success, but if that planet never receives activation through a favorable dasha, well, the results just sit there, completely dormant. Simply put, the chart is the potential, but the dasha is the timing.
In this explainer, we'll quickly cover the major Dasha systems, then we'll look at the 120-year Vimshottari clock, how to set the timer with Nakshatras, the concept of karmic fructification, and finally, the layers of prediction.
Okay, Section 1. The major Dasha systems, surveying the astrological clocks.
So, Indian astrology doesn't just rely on one single clock. It actually has quite a few. First up is the Vimshottari Dasha, which is a 120-year cycle based entirely on the moon's nakshatra. This is the absolute primary timing tool used today in Parashara astrology. But, advanced astrologers also use the Jaimini Chara Dasha, which is zodiac sign-based, to cross-verify major life events like career or marriage. Then there's the much shorter 36-year Yogini Dasha, great for really quick timing analysis. We've also got the highly complex nakshatra-based Kalachakra Dasha, used by advanced practitioners for extreme detail. And of course, there are several other classical systems like Ashtotari, which are used under very specific conditions, though they're definitely less common today. With all those different clocks ticking away, you might be wondering, why do astrologers focus so heavily on just one? Well, the Vimshottari Dasha has survived centuries of rigorous testing for a few really good reasons. It is incredibly simple and straightforward to apply. It yields highly consistent results, and it's applicable to the vast majority of birth charts out there. Honestly, when you hear an astrologer simply mention a Mahadasha, they are almost certainly talking about Vimshottari. It's the gold standard.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 120-year Vimshottari clock, the master sequence.
Now, let's break down this master sequence. This spans exactly 120 years, and it's absolutely unbreakable. It always kicks off with Ketu for 7 years. That's followed by a massive 20-year era of Venus, a brief 6 years of the Sun, 10 years for the Moon, and 7 for Mars. After that, we hit the heavy hitters, an intense 18-year stretch of Rahu, 16 years of Jupiter, a really long 19 years of Saturn, and finally 17 years of Mercury. The absolute most critical thing to remember here, this specific planetary order never ever changes before it loops back around. It is locked in.
Let's look at Section 3, Nakshatras, setting the timer. Where does your clock start?
Okay, so if the sequence is identical for everyone, how do our lives end up looking so incredibly different? Well, your unique starting point depends entirely on the moon. Here's how it works. First, you identify the specific nakshatra the moon occupied at your exact time of birth. Next, you find the planetary lord of that nakshatra. So, for example, if your moon was in Punarvasu, the planetary lord is Jupiter. What does that mean? It means you literally begin your life right in the middle of the Jupiter Mahadasha. And once that Jupiter period ends, that fixed 120-year sequence we just talked about, it automatically resumes right with the next planet in line, which is Saturn. It's kind of like jumping onto a moving train.
Let's take a closer look at this mapping because it's pretty amazing. Every single one of the 27 nakshatras maps perfectly to our 9 planets. For instance, the fire sign-oriented nakshatras like Ashwini, Magha, and Mula, they kick off the timer at Ketu, while others like Pushya, Anuratha, or Uttra Bhadrapada begin the clock at Saturn. The Jupiter group we just mentioned includes Punarvasu, Vishaka, and Purva Bhadrapada. This matrix right here is the master key. It dictates the starting point for everyone's completely unique life clock.
So let's see what this actually looks like in human terms.
Let's say you're born into the Jupiter Nakshatra group. Your childhood is spent in the expansive, learning-focused Jupiter Mahadasha. It's a great time for growth. But then, right around early adulthood, you hit the strict lessons and reality checks of Saturn. Your late 20s to early 30s bring the introspective detachment of Ketu before you finally settle into that prosperous, relationship-focused 20-year Venus Mahadasha from your mid-30s onward.
Now, I want you to contrast that with someone born into the Saturn Nakshatra group. Because their clock starts with Saturn, these natives often mature incredibly early. They might carry heavy responsibilities right there in childhood. Their young adulthood then shifts into the analytical Mercury Mahadasha, which pushes their introspective Ketu period and that prosperous Venus phase much, much later into their mature adulthood. So it's the exact same sequence of planets, but hitting at entirely different stages of biological development. It's wild, right? And then, of course, we have the wild cards, the Rahu Nakshatra group. Starting your life in the tumultuous, ambitious 18-year period of Rahu means these individuals often face really intense, unconventional themes right from day one. We're talking about being drawn toward highly unconventional life paths, maybe experiencing very strong foreign influences or undergoing sudden, unexpected major life changes in their formative years. Their early development is heavily shaped by Rahu's chaotic but highly innovative energy. Which brings us to a truly fascinating astrological insight. Two completely different people with entirely different birth charts. We're talking different rising signs, completely different house placements, the works, will experience broad, sweeping similarities in their life patterns if they share the same nakshatra lord. They are going to hit their Saturn era or their Venus era at the exact same biological ages. Now, sure, the specific events and results will differ based on their individual charts, but those overarching chronological themes, they will deeply, deeply mirror each other.
All right, Section 4. Karmic fructification explained. The seed and the fruit.
So what does all this mean? It leads us to fructification, which is really the absolute climax of prediction. Fructification is the precise period when those dormant karmic possibilities we talked about earlier are finally activated and ripened. Think of your birth chart as a tree. It has the DNA to produce incredible fruit. Maybe that's marriage, maybe it's wealth, maybe it's fame. But as we all know, a tree doesn't bear fruit all year round, right? The dasha is the active season. Unless the specific dasha arrives to trigger it, those wonderful promises are simply going to wait in a dormant state for their season to finally come.
This concept perfectly illustrates one of astrology's absolute greatest paradoxes. You could have a magnificent chart packed with strong Raja yogas, but if you enter a Mahadasha of a debilitated, severely afflicted, or poorly placed planet, say it's sitting in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house, life suddenly becomes incredibly difficult. The act of karma is stormy. But conversely, you could have a seemingly average chart with no special yogas at all, and suddenly you flourish with wealth and success. Why? Because the native enters the Mahadasha of an exalted Jupiter, a Yogakaraka Venus, or a powerful 9th lord. The chart didn't change, but the active season did. The right season changes everything.
Section 5. The layers of prediction. Mahadasha, Antardasha, and transits.
Now, in reality, a single planet rarely acts in a total vacuum. True prediction requires a layered formula. First, you look at the Mahadasha Lord. This sets the overarching theme of a massive chunk of your life. Second, you have the Antardasha Lord, which triggers the specific active subperiod within that bigger chunk. And third, you need transit support, which is the real-time movement of the planets in the sky right now. A major life event like a marriage usually requires the overarching Mahadasha, a specific Antardasha, and supportive transits all aligning at once to happen. Traditional texts tell us that completing the full 120-year cycle completely exhausts your worldly karmas. But let's be real here. Virtually no one actually lives to see all 9 planetary Mahadashas. The average human lifespan only fits about 3 to 5 of these major periods. Think about that. This means the specific planetary sequence you are born into ultimately dictates which chapters of the cosmic book you actually get to read during your lifetime and which ones will remain forever closed. So, if you take nothing else away from this explainer, remember the ultimate rule of astrological timing. The birth chart tells us what can happen. The dasha tells us when it can happen. Promise plus timing equals accurate prediction. Without a strong natal promise, dashas cannot just create miracles out of thin air. But without the right dasha, the greatest promises in a chart will sleep forever. The true art of astrology is successfully marrying those two concepts. Knowing that this master clock is always ticking and that you'll likely only experience a handful of these major chapters, how many Mahadashas do you expect to see in your lifetime? And more importantly, which planetary season are you navigating right now? It's time to grab your chart, find your moon's nakshatra, and start decoding your own 120-year timeline. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.